Now, a lot of people seem to be upset about this particular article. It seems that CD Projekt Red is going to tackle a woman's struggle in a medieval world. And I genuinely said that, well, if you get to play as Ciri, if you get to play as a woman, then I want the game to acknowledge the fact that you're a woman. Like, I genuinely want people to react as if you're a woman in a medieval setting. Like, they would be bewildered by the fact that you're on a horse. They would be bewildered by the fact that you got a sword. And it would have, like, role-playing consequences, and that would make the game great. And so, like, the question is, why are people upset? And I think it's because they don't have faith that the studio can deliver, because it's 2024, and there is a specific cultural mindset, which is how you should tackle sexism, and it's so overdone that the market is saturated. Like, for them, sexism is if a little girl is told to play with dolls, and she wants to play with action figures. And that's oppressive, incredibly harmful, sexist. If a woman is told that she should be a stay-at-home mom, right? Like, that is sexism. And that is not what's happening in a medieval society. In a medieval society, you can pretty much see how the Middle East is right now, and the comparisons are similar. Not quite the same, but they're similar. Women usually had to show piety. They had to cover up, like, even in an Orthodox culture, a lot of them would wear scarves on top of their head in order to show humility and piety. Most of them didn't really have a choice when it came to dating. It wasn't like arranged marriage, but if you're in a small village with a limited number of men, and your family kind of pushes you to marry the guy that has the most wealth, that has the most secure social background, because again, you're talking about a small village where everyone knows everyone, and so there wasn't like a lot of choice. Like, marriage wasn't for love. Marriage was to have children so that they can work on the farm, so that you don't starve to death. And I don't, like, the problem is that people don't have faith that a modern developer can recreate that culture. I personally don't know. I mean, from what I saw, a lot of the people associated with the first Witcher that made the amazing games, they've left. I was very concerned when they said they're remaking Witcher 1 and they're trying to make it for a modern audience. They're remaking stuff from the game. They're removing shit. That's a red flag. Some people like the new model of Ciri. I personally don't. Again, another red flag. I'm not saying that the game is bad because I haven't seen anything besides the trailer and what they wanted to show. But, like, so far I'm not impressed. And so I can understand where the concern is coming from. And then you have, like, this statement right here. The experience of a woman is actively quite significant in the times of Witcher in a lot of different forms. The women of this world are subject to a lot of violence. They're heavily sexualized in different ways. See, this is where it's false. Like, in a medieval society, especially in Eastern Europe, women wouldn't be sexualized almost at all. The way it worked is that the woman was usually tied to the household, like she was doing the house chores, which involved feeding the animals, cleaning the manure, knitting, sewing, cooking. Like all of this would take an entire day of work. And if anyone thought, like when you saw a woman, it was someone's wife usually, like it was someone's mother. You knew their family, you knew who she was. And so acts of infidelity or rude comments or something like that would be heavily cracked down upon by the entire community. Like if you tried to grope a woman in the streets, like besides the fact that you would get a condemnation from the church, everyone went to church every Sunday, right? So like the act would be known, like everyone would know. Her own family, which wasn't just like the husband, it was usually an extended family. Like she would have the husband and maybe 5 or 6 other kids that would pay you a visit. And so this is why like a lot of people are a little bit concerned. It's like, no, back then in medieval Eastern Europe, women weren't sexualized. I mean, they were sexualized during the Roman Empire with statues. They were sexualized during the Renaissance. And I like sexualized. I guess like in a position that can cause arousal to men, right? Like this is what the word sexualized means. There were brothels though. And as I'm reading medieval Eastern European history, it's very fascinating to find out that married men would go to brothels, and this wasn't actually an issue of infidelity. Like that just blew my mind. It's like, how is it that if you go to a brothel, it's not an issue of infidelity? It was viewed as an excess, kind of like drinking, gambling. It was viewed kind of like that. A lot of the money from the brothels would even go to the church, so that the church looks the other way. Like there was a little bit of corruption going on. And many of the children that the ladies of the night would foster, they were bastards. And they weren't recognized because it would be considered to be a great shame. But I just want you to understand, like, the type of society that existed back then, right? If you actually read the historical records and not just what Hollywood is putting forward. Again, most women, except for the ladies of the night and some women in the cities, they were very pious. I mean, even today, if you go in Eastern Europe and you go to certain villages, like, that's what you see. Like, women, they're covering their heads, they're doing various farm work, sometimes even agricultural work. You don't have, like, the concept, like, there was that video with that woman going through New York, and you have, like, people catcalling her and wolf whistling. You don't get that in a rural village, because, again, like, everyone knows everybody. So her family knows who you are. Now you can get acts of infidelity, sure, where it's basically like they're consenting and they're cheating on the husband and the wife, and that's usually causing huge village rift and drama. But no, like this idea, again, this is a 2024 type of thing. It's like women were heavily sexual, not just sexual, heavily sexualized. Like, fuck off. There's the kind of deal with the devil that sorcerers have to make, where they lose their fertility and so on. The purpose of marriage in a medieval society was to have kids. Again, there's no welfare, right? So, like, if you don't work, you don't eat. And the reason you would have a marriage is to have farmhands. Like, you're having 5 or 6 kids, they start working on the farm. And they start working on the farm very early. Usually by the age of 7, 8, they're already doing farm work. And they're raising their little brothers. And so, if one of the people is infertile, they didn't have the technology to figure out if it's the man or the woman. That was sometimes reasons in some cultures to nullify the marriage. Because again, like, the purpose wasn't for love. It's not the 2024 mindset. Like, if you want to create a game that's inspired from a medieval society, fucking make it about the medieval society and stop constantly viewing it through the modern lens. The market is already super saturated. Like, we already know the 2024 opinions. We already get the message. But, like, try to create something interesting. And in the world of Witcher, you can definitely create something interesting because they have sorceresses. And so, you have a woman that has connections. She knows kings and she knows nobility. And she's capable of doing magic and destroying you with a spell. And it creates interesting conflict. And, you know, like, they can actually be super sexualized. Which is what Triss, Marigold, and Yennefer were in the previous games. And you can create this interesting dynamic. How would the peasants react to something like that? How would the women abuse their power? Because they're human beings, right? Like, every person that's placed in such a powerful position where they can cast magic spells and they can do whatever they want and they can be above the rules of society, they're very likely to abuse that power. Now, I remember in the previous Witcher games, they actually treated these themes in a very interesting way. When you start playing Witcher 3, you eventually end up in a tavern, and you have, like, some foreign soldiers that are trying to molest the tavern keep. And this actually is something that happens throughout the medieval time period. There's a reason why it's called rape and pillage. It's the foreign invading army. They often, it wasn't like they were sexualizing the women. No, it's like it was just part of warfare, basically. They didn't have the concept of what we call it now, war crimes. Like, that was actually implied. No, like, if you're the conquering army, you can do pretty much whatever you want to the conquered. And there's no repercussions, which unleashes, like, the worst that humanity has. And so, when you start playing the game, you're in a tavern, and you have, like, these soldiers trying to force themselves onto the tavern keep, and you, as Geralt, you defend them. You don't have, like, any dialogue choice. The game kind of forces you to do it. because I think it's like during the prologue. And so once you finally kill them, the woman is horrified. And I like that. It's an immersive thing, right? Like, peasant women don't like seeing that level of violence. Like, they don't like seeing people getting decapitated. Even in that situation, even in that scenario, right? Like, she is absolutely horrified about what she did to those men. And later on in the game, she actually comes up and accuses you of being a murderer. And I was like, yeah, no, that's an immersive world. Like, yeah, like a lot of people who are playing is like, why is she acting like that? But I, who live in Eastern Europe and grew up in a rural village, I could definitely see certain people behaving like that. And a lot would say it's ungrateful, and it's like, no, it's the culture. They don't like seeing bloodshed. They don't like seeing people getting decapitated. And finally, Witcher 3 has this amazing quest line where you talk with the Baron. I think like his name is the Red Baron. I haven't played the game in over 8 years, so I'm talking from memory here. If I get some things wrong, please let me know in the comment section. But as Geralt is looking for Ciri, he eventually comes across a Baron. And you find out that Ciri was there, but you don't know what happened. You don't know if the Baron hurt her or not. And instead, the Baron says, like, okay, I'm going to tell you what happened, but you gotta help me with something else. And you have to complete the main quest line in order to find out what happened. But as you're doing the quest line, you find out that the Baron is a wife beater. You find out that the Baron is a drunk. And as you go more into depth of the storyline, you find out that, well, yeah, he's a wife beater. His wife is cheating on him. So it's a lot more complex. Like, it's not a one-sided character. It's not like good or evil. It's like that for that world, for that time period, it's something that Geralt doesn't react visceral towards. But you then find out that he actually did take in Ciri, and he was very nice to her. Like, he didn't do anything to harm her. He treated her very fairly, gave her a roof over the top of her head, gave her food and logging, and then when she wanted to leave, he let her leave. And I think he even gave her a horse. And so this is a very complex character. Like, on one hand, yeah, like, he's a wife beater. He's a misogynist, as we would say. But he's not chaotic evil. Like he's viewed as a human being with flaws and with qualities. Like, the way he treated Ciri, the way he treated someone that came up to him, a young girl, is something that a lot of people in that world wouldn't do. And he didn't even know that she's the daughter of the Nilfgaardian Emperor. Like, he didn't know any of that. And so that was when the game was creating interesting characters. And what's also interesting about it is that the Baron himself doesn't care very much about the peasants. So, like, the peasants are constantly raided by the Baron. Like, even after paying their taxes, the soldiers are coming and they're taking even more, and the peasants are worried that they're not going to have anything to eat, etc., etc. But if you choose to kill the Baron, sorry, you don't actually choose to kill the Baron. If you finish the questline in a way that the Baron dies, what happens is that the soldiers are now free and they do even more damage. And I was like, okay, so this is not a game that is trying to preach to the player. This is a game where you as the player get to immerse yourself in a world which has its own rules and traditions, and some of them are quite harsh. Like, you can even say that a lot of the elements from that world can be considered grimdark. But they're interesting because they're part of humanity's history. Even though it's a fictional setting, it still inspires heavily from a medieval time period that we had. And the purpose is to, like, play as a character, to roleplay, right? And so if they manage to do this with Ciri, and you actually get to play as a woman in that world, and you get to actually roleplay, and it's not like preaching to the player about sexismus and trying to push a narrative and a message, then it could actually be a very successful and compelling story. But if they're doing it like Dragon Age, where you get to be sat down at the table and be lectured about pronouns and be told how a real man needs to hold other men accountable and yada yada yada. You know, maybe you have Ciri saying that in order to get recognition, she needs to kill twice as much monsters as a regular Witcher. it's going to be a shit story. And this is why people are worried, because they're thinking that chances are number 2 is more likely than number 1. I personally will wait to see more things coming up before casting my judgment. As I mentioned, up until now, I saw a lot of red flags. I am very concerned about this game because I want it to be good. But I need more info. So let me know what you think. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.